Harris Bullard was found dead in his study 5 days ago. Nobody believes me, but I think he was murdered. This house in the middle of nowhere holds the secret. There's a story hiding here, and I'm going to cover it. If I'm right, there are 4 major suspects: Graham Wellington, Josie Herrera, Cynthia Peckman, Bobby Sawyer. I'm not leaving until I find out what happened.
Reclusive prof found dead in home. September 23, 1965. Gove, Kansas. Harris Bullard, retired college teacher, was found dead in his home Monday. The body was discovered by Bobby Sawyer, who worked part-time for Bullard running odd jobs. A police investigation has concluded that Bullard died of natural causes. He was 63. Bullard moved into his home on Rampa Way several years ago, but was rarely seen about town. He was a private and reclusive man who seemed to have few friends. Bullard raised eyebrows last year when a former student, a pretty young woman named Josie Herrera, moved in with him. Bullard's will, written in 1957, leaves his entire estate to his ex-wife Cynthia Peckman. Peckman will reportedly sell the house and its contents immediately. Harris was a genius in his discipline, said Graham Wellington, a former colleague. The field of neuroscience is considerably poorer without him. man who could see with his skin. In 1926, I met a man who could see with his skin. His eyes were sealed with wax and bandaged, yet he remained aware of the room around him. We held up signs which he read, and fingers which he counted even when we stood behind him. After the performance, I gave him $200 for the secret. He explained that he could see as long as some part of his skin remained exposed to the air. He described it as a shift in the wind or a slight breeze on his face, the subtle motion of the hair on his arm. After years of focus and practice, he had developed the ability to form a mental image of his surroundings based only on these slight sensations. This man had achieved a form of ideofocus. Granted, he only had access to a very narrow range of sensory information, but the result was powerful. I immediately resolved to discover the secret of his ability. Now, almost 4 decades later, I am very close. The Snow Woman, adapted from an original translation by Lafcadio O'Hearn. An old man and his son climbed a mountain to collect firewood. It began to snow heavily, and unable to make it back home, they decided to pass the night in a small hut. In the middle of the night, the young man awoke to see that the door had blown open. A tall woman with long hair and a white kimono was leaning over his father, blowing her breath upon him. When she saw that the son was awake, she said, "You are a handsome young man, so I will let you live. But if you ever speak of this to anyone, your life shall be forfeit." In the morning, the young man found his father frozen and dead. He climbed down the mountain alone and never spoke of the episode. A year later, he met and married a young, beautiful girl. They had children together and were happy, but the night of his father's death still weighed heavily on his mind. One night, after having a bit too much to drink, the man told his wife about the encounter with the Snow Woman. She was furious. "You promised not to tell," she screamed, and before his eyes she became the tall woman with long black hair and a white kimono. "If it were not for our children, I would end your life here and now. I will spare you for their sake, but if anything ever happens to them, you shall pay the price." And with that, she melted into the wind and was gone. "Joe, something is after me. It's creeping around the house, trying to get in, I'm sure of it. I heard footsteps outside and creaking on the roof. It's not safe here. I've taken the ideofocal lenses from their normal location and hidden them in my study. I've sent you a package that you'll know what to do with. Check the map for the mask. As usual, X marks the spot. Harris. P.S. The sequence is west, east, north." Writing about Ouija boards in 1852, William Benjamin Carpenter was the first to describe the phenomenon known as the Ideomotor effect. The Ideomotor effect occurs when the subconscious mind takes control of the body without the conscious mind realizing it. Ideomotor action is distinct from other forms of involuntary action because responses are driven by existing knowledge and perception. The Ouija board, Carpenter suggested, is a clear manifestation. The participants unwittingly move the planchette because their subconscious mind is guiding them. Another example of this phenomenon is dowsing, the practice of using a divining rod to locate water or other materials buried underground. The dowser holds the instrument in both hands and allows it to lead him forward until it points down at the ground, seemingly by itself. For centuries, dowsing was believed to be a form of magic or witchcraft, but we now know that it can be explained by the ideomotor effect. The dowser's subconscious mind is highly sensitive and is able to recognize cues in the environment of which his conscious mind is not aware. When these cues hint at the location of water, the subconscious mind takes control of the dowser's hands and causes him to rotate the rod to the ground. Since the conscious mind is not involved in this operation, the instrument seems to move on its own, pulled as if by some magical force. In reality, it is the dowser himself who is divining. His subconscious mind is responsible both for the detection of buried materials and for the motion of the rod. My research seeks direct access to the knowledge stored in the subconscious mind, complete unfiltered linkage between the sensitive unconscious and the logical conscious. I call this state ideofocus.
Bullard, I am Woodcutter. Your past has caught up with you. It is over.
Josie, if you're reading this note, then something must have happened to me. I may be dead or missing. If so, you're the only person who can save our research. The truth is that I'm being threatened. It started before I left the college. I get notes every few months from somebody calling himself Woodcutter. What he wants is access to our research. He wants me to turn over our plans for the lunar dream apparatus. Josie, my life is in danger. Woodcutter knows things, secret things about my past that nobody should know. I'll not yield to simple blackmail, but lately the threats have escalated. I am sure that I am being watched at the house. I sometimes hear things on the other side of the wall. Yesterday, with the mask on, I thought I saw somebody reaching for me. It's a warning from my subconscious. I am no longer safe here. I've locked our research away in the safe upstairs. I want you to retrieve it and leave. Destroy everything before you go. Burn the house down if you have to. Just get the research and get out of here. Head for a big city where it's easy to hide. I'm counting on you, Joe. Don't let our work fall into their hands. Harris. Hero says helicopter may win Vietnam War, February 16, 1965, Da Nang, South Vietnam. Medal of Honor winner from Kansas said today that helicopter may win the war in South Vietnam. Marine Major Douglas Big Tom Thompson, 39, of Fortuna, won the nation's highest military award during World War II, manning a bazooka in Iwo Jima. Major Thompson is attached to the Marine Helicopter Squadron operating along the coast and northern border of South Vietnam. Thompson's father lives in Wichita, Kansas. As a letterneck, Thompson destroyed 16 Japanese strongpoints and killed 75 Japanese on Iwo Jima in 1945. He is the only Medal of Honor winner currently serving in Vietnam. The most effective weapon the Viet Cong use is terror, the big pipe-smoking Marine said. The most effective one against them is the helicopter.
It might say reporter on my desk, but I spend most of my time at the Standard making coffee for my editor. I'm tired of writing the gossip column. This story is my shot at the big leagues. When I prove that Bullard was murdered, all the big papers will come calling. I'll finally escape this backwater town. This is it, the chance I've been waiting for.
Dear Diary, today is an anniversary. It was 5 years ago today that I found Dad's name on an old research paper at the U of C. He had written it in 1933, 8 years before I was born. I didn't know he had gone to college. I'd never really thought about his life. It was just a name on my birth certificate. Dad ran out on Mama after the war. He had gone off to fight and just never came back. When he stopped writing, Mama thought he'd been killed. I remember her crying at the kitchen table. The war ended, life went on. Mama died without ever finding out what had happened to him. I used to hate him. Hated the idea of him. Hated my mother a little bit too. I figured Dad was just a deadbeat who ditched Mama because he didn't want a kid. But when I found his name in the library, something changed. I couldn't stop thinking about him. Deadbeat dads don't study physics, do they? What is he doing now? What does he look like? Is he married to somebody else? I traced him here to Kansas, but finding him is taking longer than I had expected. Bobby, here's your latest chapter all typed up. I think this story is becoming very interesting, and I'm sure you can get it published. I hope you don't mind, but I made a few edits and inserted a few details here and there. I'm looking forward to your next chapter. Joe. The Crystal Cave by Bobby Sawyer, Chapter 3. The man had been dead for hours when they found him. He had crawled halfway up Sarah Johnson's porch steps before coming to rest just outside the door, his feet dangling off the edge like spaghetti that somebody had cooked too long. Old Sarah just about keeled over when she saw him. The man was inked. Weird lines crisscrossed every inch of his skin like Indian war paint. Even his eyelids were marked. The tattoos made him look like some African shaman out of National Geographic, except that he was white and was wearing work overalls 2 sizes too big. Jimmy, the only cop on duty at 6 in the morning, thought maybe the man had escaped from a chain gang. Jimmy was never the sharpest tool in the shed. Detective Henderson, though, he's as smart as a whip. He had photos taken of the body, all naked and everything. He put the pictures up on his wall at the little station in the middle of town and started moving them around, turning them this way and that, until the tattoo edges started to line up. It took him 3 days, but he put it together just like a jigsaw puzzle, until the thick lines all connected to the thin lines, and the overall shape became clear. Would you believe it? It was a map. When the coroner cut the man open, he found his insides were all twisted into the same map, and when they sawed into the man's bone, they found the map there too, etched into the marrow like rings on a tree stump. Well, that's how we first found our way to the cave.